Let me ask you something. What if the world you think you know is only a carefully managed surface? What if the really big decisions, the ones that shape our lives, are being made based on things we're never meant to see? We're about to look at the architecture of how that might work.
Now, this isn't about chasing rumors. What we're doing here is following documented patterns. We're looking at timelines, internal memos, and maybe the most telling thing of all, the silences. Because what the source documents seem to suggest is that sometimes the truth isn't really hidden at all. It's just buried in plain sight.
So, where does a hidden story even start? Well, it's almost never with a big, flashy headline. According to the people who've spent their lives studying these events, it always starts much smaller. It starts with the first inconsistency.
It usually begins with a small detail, something that just doesn't add up. A budget for a project that helps no one, or maybe a new policy that seems to contradict its own purpose. It's just a decision that, on its face, makes absolutely no sense.
And then, maybe you see another crack, a public report where the conclusion doesn't seem to match the data inside it. Or a program that clearly isn't working, but just keeps getting funded, year after year. These are the little threads that investigators, well, this is where they start to pull. And the conclusion that many researchers eventually arrive at is pretty heavy. The truth wasn't missing. It was fragmented. It was intentionally scattered across hundreds of different reports, memos, and tiny footnotes. The idea, it seems, was to make sure that no one person could ever put the whole picture together. And that leads us to a really important idea about how power actually works. It's not always about force. A lot of the time, it's just about controlling the story. The documents indicate a very consistent strategy. When a piece of information comes out that could be destabilizing, the goal isn't always to deny it. It seems the more effective tactic is to just reframe it. You change the context, you redirect everyone's attention, and you let the original question just run out of oxygen until it quietly fades away. And here's what that looks like in practice. A piece of information emerges that poses a threat. The documented response isn't to fight it head-on. It's to redirect the entire conversation. A new, much bigger story is suddenly everywhere. And the original question? It's never really answered. It just sort of gets forgotten. So years go by, and then the paper trail starts to surface. Declassified files, usually with a lot blacked out, are quietly released. By itself, one file doesn't tell you much. But when analysts start to compare these documents from different decades, a pattern of evidence begins to emerge. We see researchers looking at these files from totally different events, different times, even different agencies. They started noticing something. The same phrases, the same justifications were being used over and over again. As one of those memos puts it, coincidence does not repeat itself this precisely. And this is where that pattern becomes very hard to ignore. You look at these redacted case files from different times and places, and the justification language is identical, necessary to maintain stability, must act before public awareness. This doesn't look like a coincidence. The evidence suggests it's a playbook. When you see it laid out like that, it forces a very direct and pretty uncomfortable question. Who decided this was acceptable? Okay, so what's the end result of a system like this? What's the unresolved question here? And more importantly, why should any of this matter to us right now? Well, when you follow these patterns of secrecy all the way to their outcome, the result is remarkably consistent. Authority becomes more centralized. Budgets get bigger without any real justification. Oversight gets weaker. And accountability? Well, accountability just vanishes behind a curtain labeled national interest. And that leads us to the simplest, most fundamental question you can ask in any investigation. Who gained power from all of this? Look, this isn't just a history lesson. The source material is quite clear about this. The very systems that allowed for this to happen, they still exist. The language used to justify the secrecy, it's still being used. The technology has changed, sure, but the underlying strategy appears to be the same. Once you see this pattern, the fragmented stories, the constant reframing of narratives, the same words showing up in official documents again and again, it's very difficult to unsee it. And at that point, ignoring it really becomes a choice. And so, that leaves us with one final and deeply unsettling question. If this whole architecture of hidden history was truly never meant to be discovered, then why is the evidence still there?